My name is Violet Paul, 32 years old. 3 years ago, I believed I had finally outrun the ache of my 20s and crashed straight into the kind of love that promised to be ordinary in all the right ways. 2 toothbrushes in one cup, one grocery bill, and a steady future that didn't rattle. I am a real estate investment analyst. Pattern recognition is my profession. I notice where the cracks will form before anyone else does. That's why what happened still embarrasses me. I saw the cracks and called them character. I met Ethan at an open house I was analyzing in Denver, the kind with crown molding that pretends it's a halo and windows that are more memory than glass. He was at the refreshment table pouring lemonade like a man auditioning to be gentle. He told me he taught PE at a middle school and trained clients on weekends. I told him I made spreadsheets that could turn a whisper of profit into a project. He laughed and said, "So you predict the future and I teach push-ups. I think that makes us even." We were married within 2 years. It felt inevitable in the way rain is inevitable when the air has been heavy all day. After the wedding, he quit teaching to find his purpose. I supported him because I thought that's what love looked like beyond the ceremony. Your partner jumps, you spot them. "Maybe a gym," he said, "a place that feels like community." I said yes to everything. Classes he never finished, equipment he never quite purchased, retreats that were somehow both work and soul. The house we lived in was mine, bought 2 years before I knew Ethan's name, paid for with overtime and takeout and an alarming number of almond croissants. My sister Laura, a real estate attorney with a memory for bloodless catastrophes, had insisted my name remain alone on the deed, the mortgage, the utilities. "It's not romance," she said. "It's documentation." I listened, not because I expected betrayal, but because I learned young that clear papers make clean exits. I filed the advice next to my title insurance and forgot it, like keeping a fire extinguisher and convincing yourself you'll never need it. 6 months after our wedding, Ethan quit his last class mid-module and stood in our kitchen with apologies in his eyes and hope in his hands. He said maybe he needed to travel a little, just enough to restart his energy. Colorado retreats, breathwork weekends. "It's all research," he promised. I smiled, paid the credit card bill, and told myself that love meant allowing someone to become the best version of themselves, even if the cocoon required wholesale shipping. The details started to not add up around month 14. He began a meal prep habit that required a full wardrobe of new athletic wear I hadn't bought. He was protective of his phone the way people are protective of secrets dressed like phones. There were wellness retreats every other weekend, but when I asked what the seminars covered, he'd say things like, "It's hard to explain, you had to be in the room." The receipts looked like breadcrumbs someone else had eaten. When you spend your life staring at budgets, you hear numbers like a language. I heard our marriage speaking in a dialect that excluded me. It wasn't the cost. It was the story those costs refused to tell. The night I found the Venmo transactions was a Tuesday. Tuesdays are honest nights. No new week optimism, no weekend seduction, just a straight line from day to night. I'd left my phone on the coffee table. His was beside it. A notification lit his screen with a soft, treacherous glow. Melissa Grant, $250. Airbnb split. Thanks for an amazing weekend. A red heart. That emoji had the nerve to be cheerful. I didn't gasp. I didn't throw. I didn't even blink for a full 5 seconds because I wanted to be certain it was my eyelids that moved first, not my judgment. I opened the app. The history read like a couple's scrapbook. But in finance, dinners split, ride shares split, you're worth it split. Dozens of payments over 5 months. There are patterns you only see when you zoom out, and patterns you only believe when they cut you. I took screenshots. It felt profane, like photographing an accident you caused by minding your own business. I emailed them to myself, labeled the thread housekeeping, because survival is sometimes a matter of naming the fire something domestic. Then I put his phone exactly where it had been and stared at the dark window long enough to watch my face realize I was the only adult left in the room. I called Laura. She didn't say hello. She said, "How bad?" "Venmo, Airbnb splits?" "A woman named Melissa," I answered, and my voice surprised me by being steady. She asked me 3 questions, courtroom clean. "Do you want to save this marriage? Can you ever trust him again? Are you prepared for what comes next?" "No, no. Yes, it was strange how quickly the truths arranged themselves when I allowed them to sit together. Good, she said, like I'd chosen a door everyone pretends doesn't exist. Listen to me. Keep records, not arguments. Evidence wins. Emotion loses. You will want to storm and cry and demand. Don't. Let him talk. You collect. I'll put you in touch with Martin for asset division if it gets that far. I didn't sleep. I boiled water for tea I never drank and stood in the doorway of our bedroom watching him breathe with the faith of a child. I noticed the slope of his shoulders under the quilt and thought, idiotic and tender. I chose that back to lean on. Then a smaller, colder thought hooked itself inside me. If he could sleep this easily inside a life he was hollowing out, then he had been practicing this piece without me for months. The confrontation was 2 days later, because I needed to be sure I recognized my own voice when it said, enough. He came home smelling like eucalyptus and shampoo that cost too much to be morally neutral. I set my laptop on the counter and opened the screenshots. I need you to explain this, I said, and slid the screen toward him like an offering. He studied the evidence with a calm I will never forget, then looked up wounded. You went through my phone, he said. A notification came up. I was careful with language because precision is dignity when someone tries to narrate you out of your own life. Melissa Grant, Airbnb splits. You're worth it. He laughed, a sound with the edges of an apology, but none of the content. Violet, you have been so controlling lately. I can't breathe. Melissa is a friend who believes in me. She fronts costs sometimes, and I pay her back. You know money's been tight. This is you being paranoid. There are doors that slam, and there are doors that close politely behind the person leaving. In that moment, a door closed somewhere inside me with exquisite courtesy. We will talk to Laura, I said. He rolled his eyes, called my sister a bulldog, told me love shouldn't require a ledger. Love shouldn't require a lie, I answered, and felt my voice learn how to survive without him. He moved out within 2 weeks. He filed for divorce first. His lawyer wrote a letter that felt like I had dreamed the past 3 years and billed me for it. Half of everything, including the house, my retirement accounts, even my Audi. The argument was that he had sacrificed his career for our marriage, that Colorado is an equitable distribution state, that I owed him a runway because he'd given me belief. I hired Martin Cole, not Laura, because she prefers to be my sister, not my sword. Martin is quiet in the way of people who have already won most of their fights. We're going to be thorough, he told me. Thorough beats theatrical, always. The week before mediation, I was sorting old mail at the kitchen table, the tasks you do when you need your hands to stay busy so your mind does not leap. But the envelope that changed everything wasn't old. It was fresh ink on fresh paper, a lease. 2-bedroom apartment in the Reno district, signed 3 weeks before Ethan filed for divorce. 2 names, bottom right, like a punchline I didn't laugh at, Ethan Reed and Melissa Grant. Planning your exit is a choice. Planning your exit from the house someone else pays for while you call that house ours is a resume for the life you think you deserve. I made 3 copies, one for Martin, one for Laura, one for the folder that had begun to feel like a reliquary, quiet, sacred, and a little frightening. I didn't tell Ethan I had it. Laura's voice lived at the edge of my decisions. Surprise is the only advantage once the war has been announced. The night before mediation, Melissa posted a rooftop photo of them, her hand on his chest, the caption, New Beginnings. He tagged me by accident or malice. I took a screenshot and added it to the folder with a care that felt like ritual. Around 3 a.m, I brewed coffee that tasted like a bridge. I stood at the kitchen sink and watched the dark think about morning. He thought I was naive, the girl who runs numbers on distressed assets but couldn't spot a distressed heart in her own home. He confused kindness for confusion. I held the lease in my hand and finally understood the shape of the ending. I whispered it to the quiet room as if it were a spell I could practice. Keep records, not arguments. The words settled in my chest like a lock finding its key. And then, because I am a woman who believes in evidence and in light, I flipped the folder closed and placed it gently on the counter. It made a sound I will always remember, small and final, like punctuation. The morning Ethan moved out, the air in the house felt too clean, like it was trying to forget what had happened inside it. He took his gym bag, his blender, and his lies, and left behind the smell of cedar shampoo and unfinished sentences. I didn't chase him down the driveway. I didn't cry into the curtains. I opened my laptop instead. My sister Laura always said there are two kinds of people, those who fight to be right and those who prepare to win. I chose the latter. I spent the next few days collecting every piece of documentation I could find. Mortgage statements, all in my name. Utility bills, my name again. Tax returns proving I carried every expense. A copy of Ethan's resignation email, bright with exclamation points and words like self-discovery. I kept everything in a plain black folder, no label, just wait. Every night I added something new, screenshots, text messages, receipts, and with each page I felt a strange kind of calm settle in. Laura called every evening. Laura, on phone. You good? Violet. I'm focused. Laura. Don't let him pull you into the emotional mud. That's where manipulators live. Violet. He's already dirty enough for both of us. When Ethan filed for divorce 2 weeks later, his lawyer's letter arrived with the confidence of someone who'd never lost. Half of the house, half of my accounts, half of a life he'd only half participated in. He even wanted my car. The argument? Ethan gave up his stable job to support Violet emotionally. She became the sole earner. Therefore, her earnings were joint contributions. When Martin read the letter, he didn't even blink. Martin, this isn't a negotiation. It's theater. Don't play the role they've written for you. Violet, so what's my role? Martin, the quiet truth. It's always deadlier than shouting. The days before mediation blurred into strategy meetings and silence. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger would have been easy. What I felt was colder, quieter, like standing outside your own house, watching it burn, realizing you don't want to go back in anyway. Then, on a Sunday night, while sorting through unopened mail, I found something that made my chest tighten. A lease agreement dated 3 weeks before Ethan filed. 2 names signed at the bottom. Ethan Reed and Melissa Grant. A 2-bedroom apartment in the Reno district. The rent? Nearly identical to the mortgage I'd been paying on our home. He hadn't just been cheating. He had been preparing. I stared at the signatures, the pen strokes almost smug in their confidence. Melissa's handwriting looped around his like a promise. I printed 3 copies. One for Martin, one for Laura, one for me. I slipped mine into the folder under the Venmo screenshots. That sound, the paper sliding against paper, was like the closing of a trap. I didn't tell Ethan about it. Not yet. Laura's voice echoed in my head. Never warn someone they're about to be caught. Let them walk straight into it. The next morning, Ethan posted a photo with Melissa on Instagram. Rooftop bar, Denver skyline, her hand on his chest. The caption read, "New beginnings," and he tagged me. The comment section was full of fire emojis and heart eyes, people congratulating them as if betrayal were a career milestone. I took a screenshot and added it to the folder. That night, my phone buzzed, a direct message from Ethan. Ethan, hope you're ready to lose. Ethan, you built that house. We'll live in it. I didn't reply. I just forwarded it to Laura. 10 minutes later, she called. Laura, perfect. Keep it. Violet, he's not even trying to hide anymore. Laura, let him gloat. Pride makes people sloppy. He'll hand you the rest of your evidence himself. The week before mediation, I started sleeping better. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I finally understood something my therapist once told me. Sometimes closure isn't peace. It's paperwork. Each morning I went to work, reviewed investment portfolios, smiled through meetings, and came home to silence. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt mine. Every room whispered, "You survived this here." One night, while organizing files for Martin, I found a recording function on my phone and tested it. The little red dot blinked steadily, like a heartbeat I could control. I realized that control was what Ethan had underestimated most. He thought silence meant weakness. But silence can be surveillance. Silence can be strategy. 3 days before mediation, Ethan sent me one final message. Ethan, maybe we can talk privately before court. Without lawyers. Just us. Violet, no. Let's keep everything documented. He didn't reply, but Melissa did. Melissa, you don't have to make this ugly. We just want what's fair. Fair. That word has teeth when it comes from people who bit you first. I stared at the message and thought of the folder, its weight, its patience. I wrote back, Violet, I'm not making it ugly. I'm just keeping it accurate. That was the last time I spoke to either of them before mediation day. The night before, I laid out my Navy suit, the same one I wore during my first major investment pitch, the one that made me feel unshakable. On my kitchen counter sat the folder, closed, ready, heavier than it should have been. I ran my hand over it and whispered, "You laughed at the wrong person." Outside, Denver slept under a thin drizzle. Inside, I finally felt ready to wake something up. Tomorrow would be the day their stories collided with my evidence, and when the truth arrived, it wouldn't knock. The morning of mediation began with rain, the kind that doesn't pour, it lingers, like it's deciding whether to forgive the city or drown it. I left the house early, folder in hand, navy suit pressed sharp enough to slice through pretense. Martin met me in the courthouse parking lot. He was calm as ever, coat collar turned up, coffee in one hand, briefcase in the other. "Martin, remember, mediation isn't justice, it's theater." Violet. "Then let's give them the best performance of their lives." Inside, the conference room smelled like old coffee and tension. The mediator, Ruth, sat at the head of a long table, polite smile, eyes that could read every hidden motive. Ethan was already there, sitting with a confidence that didn't belong to him. His lawyer, Diane, whispered in his ear. Melissa sat beside him even though she wasn't supposed to. She was dressed like a witness in her own fantasy, white blouse, sympathetic eyes, playing the part of misunderstood muse. When I walked in, Ethan's smirk faltered just a fraction. That was enough. "Ruth, let's begin. This is an opportunity to reach a fair resolution without the expense of trial." Fair. That word again. I set the folder on the table with care. It made a sound that drew every eye. Diane spoke first. She spun a story so artful it could have been fiction. Ethan, the supportive husband, gave up his teaching career to nurture Violet's demanding work life. He handled the home. He sacrificed his independence for their love. Now he was left with nothing while Violet thrived. She emphasized how Violet pressured him to quit, how her financial control left him isolated and disempowered. Every line was rehearsed, every pause calculated for sympathy. When she finished, Ruth nodded to Martin. "Ruth." "Mr. Cole," Martin, calmly, "thank you." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a binder, 3 inches thick. The sound of the latch clicking open was louder than Diane's entire argument. He began with the facts. Deed dated 2 years before the marriage. Sole ownership by Violet Paul. Mortgage payments from her account, no co-contributions. Utility bills, insurance, property taxes, all her name. Ethan's voluntary resignation letter from the school district, written 6 months after the wedding. Ruth's pen stopped moving. She looked at Ethan. "Ruth, Mr. Reed, do you dispute these records?" Ethan, hesitating. "Well, the paperwork doesn't show everything about a relationship." That's when Melissa reached for his hand under the table. It was such a small gesture, but so loud. Ruth's gaze flicked toward her. "Ruth, I'm sorry. Miss Grant, you're not party to this mediation." "Melissa, I'm just here for support." "Ruth, then please remain silent." Silence, my favorite word that week. 15 minutes later, Ruth called for a short break. I stepped into the hallway for air. My hands weren't shaking, but the hallway felt too narrow, the air too thick. Then I heard him. Ethan's voice, loud, cocky, phone pressed to his ear. Ethan, laughing. "Yeah, it's going exactly how we planned. She'll cave. By spring we'll have enough to open the gym. This guy, he has no clue what's coming." He chuckled again, lower this time. "Ethan, she still thinks she's in control." He didn't see me standing behind the vending machine. Colorado is a one-party consent state. Laura's voice, again, in my mind. If someone wants to dig their own grave, all you need to do is press record. I opened the voice recorder app, hit the red circle, and let him keep talking. 3 minutes of self-incrimination. 3 minutes of arrogance turned into evidence. When we returned to the room, I didn't even look at him. Martin leaned over and whispered, "Martin, something happened?" Violet, "He just wrote our closing argument." The rest of the mediation played out like a slow-motion collapse. Ruth's patience wore thin as Ethan contradicted himself, claiming poverty while flaunting his upcoming business. By the end, Ruth sighed and said she would file her report to the court since settlement wasn't possible. Outside, the rain had stopped, replaced by sunlight that looked almost smug. Ethan and Melissa exited first. He turned back once, smirking like he still thought this was foreplay, not fallout. That night my phone buzzed, a direct message from Ethan again. Ethan, enjoy losing, Violet. You built the house. We'll live in it. I stared at the screen, then forwarded the message to Laura. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Laura, congratulations. They just confessed to intent. Keep it safe. I saved the message into the folder. Then I transferred the recording to my laptop and backed it up twice. Every sound of his laughter was clear, like a reminder that arrogance is its own evidence. The next morning, Martin called. Martin, we're ready. The lease, the Venmo, the recording. This isn't a divorce anymore. It's a dismantling. Violet, good. I want it clean. No theatrics, no gloating. Martin, you'll get clean. They'll get consequences. That night, I sat by the window, watching cars blur through the streetlights. I thought about how betrayal is never sudden. It's just the first time you stop pretending you don't see it. Ethan believed I was quiet because I was broken. But silence is not weakness. Silence is a plan that doesn't need an audience. I looked at the folder again, my quiet weapon. Inside it, the entire truth of our marriage, curated like evidence for a museum exhibit no one would want to visit. Tomorrow, I'd walk into the courthouse and open it. And when I did, I wouldn't just be proving his lies. I'd be proving that I was done being written out of my own story. The Denver courthouse had marble floors that made every step echo like a memory you couldn't forget. I arrived 30 minutes early, folder in hand, pulse calm in a way that made me feel older than I was. Martin met me at the door, immaculate as ever. Martin, same suit as mediation? Violet, consistency matters. Martin, good. Let them see you as the constant. Everything else in this room will shift. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Rows of wooden benches, a clock that ticked too loud, and there, Ethan and Melissa, already seated. He wore a pressed blue shirt that strained at the shoulders. She had chosen something soft, victim-coated, pastel. They looked like a couple attending their own PR campaign. He smiled when he saw me. I didn't return it. Judge Marlowe entered, a man in his 50s with graying temples and eyes like they'd seen every version of human regret. Bailiff, case of Paul versus Reed, Property and Asset Division. When the judge nodded for Diane to begin, she stood smoothly, her tone warm and rehearsed. She described Ethan as a devoted husband who sacrificed personal ambitions to support his wife's career. She painted me as the cold, career-driven woman who used financial power as control. Every word was strategically soft, every accusation sugar-coated. Then she called Ethan to speak. Ethan, carefully, I never wanted this to be ugly. I just gave up everything for Violet. My job, my independence. She told me she'd take care of me. And when I tried to build something of my own, she said it was foolish. Melissa's eyes glistened on cue, a single tear balanced for effect. Judge Marlowe listened, expression unreadable. When Ethan sat down, I caught the faintest smirk from him. It was the same one he'd worn the night I found the Venmo transactions. The same smirk that had built my folder page by page. Then Martin stood. He didn't clear his throat or grandstand. He simply began, voice low and exact. Martin, Your Honor, my client has been accused of control. Let's examine the facts she's supposedly controlled. He opened the folder. That quiet sound, the clasp releasing, was more powerful than any shout. Martin, deed, mortgage, utility bills, purchased 2 years before marriage. Sole ownership, Violet Paul. Martin, property taxes paid in full from her account. Martin, mortgage, same. Martin, bank statements, every household expense, every repair, every insurance premium, all Violet's responsibility. Martin, Ethan Reed voluntarily resigned from his teaching job. He slid a printed email across the table. Martin, his exact words, excited to explore new opportunities, to live freely and pursue personal growth. Judge Marlowe raised an eyebrow. Judge Marlowe, Ms. Diane, do you dispute this document? Diane, financial records don't capture emotional reality. Martin, no, but they capture truth. Then, quietly, Martin continued. Martin, my client has not made emotional claims, Your Honor. She has made a case of math and law. Ethan's smirk faded. Then came the question, the one Laura predicted weeks ago. Judge Marlowe, Mr. Reed, are you currently living with Miss Melissa Grant? For the first time that morning, silence had texture. Ethan glanced at Diane, then at Melissa, then back to the judge. Ethan, no, Your Honor. We're close friends, but we don't live together." Martin didn't react. He simply nodded toward me. I passed him a sealed envelope. He opened it and pulled out the lease agreement. "Martin, this is a residential lease for a 2-bedroom apartment in the Reno district. Signed by Ethan Reed and Melissa Grant. Dated 3 weeks before Mr. Reed filed for divorce." Judge Marlowe examined it slowly. His gaze flicked back to Ethan, then to Melissa. "Judge Marlowe, Mr. Reed, Miss Grant, care to explain this?" Melissa shifted in her seat, fingers twisting her bracelet. Ethan tried to speak, stumbled, then went silent. Martin wasn't finished. "Martin, there's also this, an audio recording." He pressed play on his phone. Ethan's voice filled the courtroom, too confident to realize it was hanging itself. "Ethan, recording. Yeah, it's going exactly how we planned. By spring, we'll have enough to open the gym. This guy, he has no clue what's coming." The sound of his laughter echoed through the room. Melissa buried her face in her hands. Ethan's complexion turned the color of paper. "Martin, and finally, Your Honor, a message sent directly from Mr. Reed to my client. You built the house. We'll live in it." He handed over a printed screenshot. The judge closed the folder. For a moment, the only sound was the low hum of the air vents. Judge Marlowe measured. After reviewing the evidence, the property in question was purchased prior to marriage. No contribution, financial or otherwise, has been demonstrated by the respondent. Further, the presented documents and recording show clear intent of cohabitation and financial planning between Mr. Reed and Miss Grant before the dissolution filing. He paused, eyes still on Ethan. "Judge Marlowe, therefore, the house remains the sole property of Miss Paul. No division of assets will occur. Minimal spousal support, 90 days, to allow Mr. Reed to seek employment, after which all obligations are terminated due to his domestic arrangement with Miss Grant." Melissa gasped. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Judge Marlowe, this case is concluded." The gavel fell like a full stop at the end of a sentence I'd been rewriting for months. Ethan started to speak. Maybe an apology, maybe one last attempt to twist the narrative, but the bailiff's glance made him think better of it. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded at Martin, whispered, "Thank you," and walked out. Outside, the sunlight was so bright it almost hurt. Denver looked the same. Cars moving, people laughing, life indifferent. But the weight in my chest had shifted. The silence that once trapped me now felt clean, purposeful. Martin joined me on the courthouse steps. "Martin, that's what happens when you bring paper to a story built on air." Violet, he really thought he could rewrite reality. Martin, they always do, until the folder opens. I looked down at the folder in my hands, edges worn, pages slightly curled from months of quiet war. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was release. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving that I had never needed to raise my voice to end a storm. When the judge closed that folder, his smile didn't just fade, it shattered. 14 months. That's how long it's been since the judge's gavel fell and I walked out of that courtroom. Long enough for Denver's seasons to turn over twice. Long enough for the memories to stop burning and start fading into quiet facts. I sold the old house that spring. Not because I needed to, but because I couldn't bear how its walls still echoed with his voice. The master bedroom felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by all the sentences that ended in, "I'll try." So I moved to Littleton. Bought a smaller place with a wild backyard and a leaky faucet that never stopped singing. It needed work. So did I. On weekends, I painted fences, replaced old tiles, mowed the lawn myself. Every repair felt like erasing a fingerprint I didn't know was there. Laura came by often. She'd stand in the kitchen doorway, holding a bottle of wine, teasing. Laura, "You know, you could hire someone to do this." Violet, "I know." Laura, "Then why don't you?" Violet, "Because fixing something myself reminds me it's mine." Work helped too. I started mentoring new analysts, teaching them how to see red flags in investments before they collapse. They didn't know how personal that lesson really was. By April, Laura convinced me to try therapy. My therapist, David, said something during the first session that I wrote down in my phone and still read sometimes. Healing isn't forgetting, it's filing away what you've already learned so you can build something new on top of it. We talked about control, about trust, about how silence had become my shield. He asked me what I'd do if someone new came along. I I said I didn't know. That was a lie. I did know. I'd wait for peace, not sparks. That peace arrived one evening, disguised as laughter. His name was Liam Woods, my neighbor, 2 houses down. He was a tax consultant, calm in a way that made quiet feel like music. We met because his cat, Jupiter, kept sneaking into my yard and falling asleep on my porch swing. The first time he came to retrieve her, he apologized too much. Liam, I swear she's not usually this forward. Violet, don't worry, she has good taste. He laughed, and I realized I hadn't heard a genuine laugh in my house for years. Not the performative kind Ethan used when he wanted the world to see his teeth. This one was soft, real, unguarded. Weeks passed. He started dropping by for coffee, sometimes dinner. There was no rush, no pretending, just quiet presence. And when he looked at me, he didn't see a woman to rescue or reshape. He saw someone who'd already rescued herself. I told him about the divorce early. I didn't want to carry secrets. He listened without flinching. Liam, everyone's been broken by something. The question is, did you stay there, Violet? No. Liam, then that's all that matters. For the first time in years, I felt my guard lower without panic following behind it. Then, one Tuesday morning in late June, a plain white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in handwriting I would have recognized even in a fire. Ethan. I stood there for a long moment before opening it. The paper inside trembled slightly in my hands, not because of fear, but because some part of me didn't want proof that he still existed. His letter was 6 paragraphs long. The first 3 were apologies written in the language of hindsight. He admitted to lying in court, to planning the exit months before leaving, to convincing himself that because I earned more, I somehow owed him. He said Melissa had left him weeks after the trial, blaming him for ruining her plans. Their gym had never opened. Investors backed out. He was living with a friend, trying to rebuild. The 4th paragraph surprised me. He wrote, "You didn't ruin me, Violet. My choices did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know I see it now." The last 2 were short, a wish for my happiness, and a final line that said simply, "You deserve better than me." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. Then I folded it neatly and placed it on my coffee table. That night I told Laura, "Laura, don't reply. Closure doesn't require conversation." Violet, "I know, but I'm not sure silence is the same as peace." Later I told Liam. He thought for a moment before answering. Liam, forgiveness isn't about them. It's about what you stop carrying. If you keep holding it, it's still his. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen counter with a cup of coffee and a blank sheet of paper. I didn't write much, just a few sentences. Ethan, I received your letter. I accept your apology. I hope you find stability and peace, as I have. Take care, Violet. No bitterness, no open doors, just punctuation. I sealed it, mailed it, and when I dropped it into the blue mailbox, I felt the smallest breath of something unburdening itself inside me. Back home, I opened my filing cabinet. Behind old tax returns sat a folder, edges frayed, label faded. Inside were the lease, the screenshots, the recordings, all the evidence that once defined my heartbreak. I pulled it out, held it one last time. It didn't feel heavy anymore. I slid it into the back of the drawer again, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. That proof doesn't always serve revenge. Sometimes it just protects the version of yourself that refuses to be lied to again. When I closed the drawer, I caught my reflection in the glass cabinet. Steady, a little older, but whole. David once said that some people spend years waiting for closure from the person who broke them, but real closure comes the day you stop auditioning for their remorse. That night, Liam came over with Jupiter in his arms and 2 takeout containers of Thai food. Liam, you look lighter today. Violet, maybe I finally mailed the past. He smiled. Liam, good, keep the receipt. We ate on the porch while the sun dipped behind the trees, the air golden and kind. And as the cicadas hummed their endless song, I realized something simple and certain. The silence I'd once used as a shield had become something softer, peaceful, earned, mine. Forgiveness wasn't reunion. It was release. And for the first time in years, I was free enough to enjoy the quiet.